theyeshiva.net.
When thinking about how to introduce Rabbi Jacobson Shlita, I figure the best place to look is this fantastic book, and I noticed it is available for purchase right outside in the lobby. I did receive my copy personally from Nachi last year. It's a book that Nachi compiled together with Yisrael Besser, the renowned writer, and it's called Meaningful Minutes, Short Messages of Inspiration and Hope to Uplift and Illuminate Your Day. I was taking a peek the other day and I said, who do you think is going to be quoted more often than anybody else throughout the pages of this book? And of course, it comes as no surprise. It's none other than tonight's speaker. So I thought, flipping through the pages, perhaps I can find, and I'm sure I would, an uplifting and inspirational message. And that would be apropos to introducing the illustrious, a very special Rabbi Jacobson. So I turn to page 30 and I'd like to share with you the following. The flames of the menorah, a perfect row of lights, are magnificent. But then there is the shamish just a little higher in a row all by itself. If a person devotes his life to self-enhancement, to self-perfection, to growth, that's wonderful. That's admirable. But it's not what will ultimately allow him to reach his greatest heights. When a person becomes a shamish, when he dedicates his life to helping others give light, to become a conduit for light and love and hope, then he empowers and inspires others, then indeed he is living higher. To dream alone is awesome. But to help others realize their dreams is even greater, because you don't only bring out the best in them, you bring out the best in yourself. Who penned these fantastic words? And none other than Agon Arav Rabbi Jacobson Shlita and Roy HaDvarim Lamisha Amram, because tonight we have the schus, the honor and the privilege to hear Divrei Chizuk and Esoros Lekras the Yom Naram Abam Leina the Tova from someone who spends his life day in and day out, meaningful minutes, each and every minute of his very special life, inspiring, lighting flames, kindling those heilige neshamas and Yidden the world over. And in that process, he indeed has brought out the best in himself, continues to bring out the best in himself, while he lights the flames and spends his life selflessly devoted to bringing out the very best in each and every one of us with a gewaldige schus that we have tonight in our community. And we thank each and every one of you for coming. What a special schus. We're Makar Tov, Ade and Shir, to the unparalleled Hagon Rabbi Jacobson Shlita. Please give him your undivided attention.
Thank you so much, Rafiner Shlita, the Marad Asra, and Bereshus, the Rav, and the entire community. Once again, a great privilege. I mamish can't see anybody. This is really blinding. The good news is you could fall asleep. You can eat, you can text, you can send emails, and I will not notice. As long as you don't snore loud, because then I could still hear it despite the light. It's really a very great pleasure and privilege to be here with you this great evening before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, inspired and arranged and organized by a meaningful minute, the meaningful minute. It's also a great schus and privilege to be here with the Tepfer family, commemorating the 6th yahrzeit of that young, unforgettable soul, Aaron Shalom Tepfer, Zechreinu Livracha, as we continue to follow in Aaron's ways, to become and continue to be ambassadors of light and healing and love and kindness, the life that young Aaron Shalom personified for the short decade in which he lived amongst us, short in quantity, but profound and rich in quality, with an everlasting legacy, not only for his parents and siblings and family, but for the entire community and ultimately for all of the Jewish people. May his memory continue to serve as a source of inspiration and blessing and bracha to his beloved parents, to the entire family, to the entire community, and to all of our people. And may all of us and all of you be blessed with a good gebencht Jahr, a Shana Tova, Sukkah, Ksiva Vachzima Tova. May Hashem fulfill all of your heart's desires for health, happiness, prosperity, nachas, materially and spiritually. A year of true fulfillment and a year of redemption. Amen. Ken Yehi Ratzon. You know, I always wondered in the Haggadah on Pesach, we do the 10 plagues, the 10 makas, and then we say, Rabbi Yehuda hayanoisen behem simonim detzach adash be'achav. Rabbi Yehuda had a mnemonic. He had a short abbreviation for the 10 plagues. And the question is, the commentators raise it, what's the novelty of Rabbi Yehuda? Anybody could have done the same thing. I mean, you take 10 plagues, you take the first letter of each of the words, Dam, Tzvardeya, so you have Dalet, Sadik, Chaf, Ayin. What did we need Rabbi Yehuda, one of the greatest sages of his day, to give us this abbreviation, and we quote it in his name? So I once heard somebody share the following, I guess you could say humorous or anecdotal insight. And he said, the Gemara says in Maseches Brachos that Rabbi Yehuda was Rosh HaMedabrim B'chol Makom. He was like the great speaker, the voice for the Jewish people in every location. Rosh HaMedabrim. Why Rabbi Yehuda? And this man said, I'll tell you why it was Rabbi Yehuda. Because Rabbi Yehuda had a skill. He can take 10 words and turn them into 3. He says most people, they take 3 and they turn them into 10. They say that there was once a professor who was extremely haughty and arrogant. He thought of himself as the world genius. Problem was nobody else thought of him such. Anyway, he came to some great scientific conference, and as he's getting up to deliver what he felt was a historic paper that would transform the landscape of modern physics, the organizer of the conference whispers into his ear and says, Herr Professor, 7 minutes. 7 minutes you have to speak. And he looks at this man enraged. He says, what am I going to say in 7 minutes? He says, don't worry, speak very slowly. The ability to be able to take 10 and turn it into Tetzach Adash B'achav, turn them into the Rosh HaMedabrim B'chol Makom, the ability to be able to take a concept and compress it in concise, brief, sharp, acute terms. This turned him into the Rosh HaMedabrim B'chol Makom. Sometimes I look at my videos on a meaningful minute. I spoke for 2 hours. But Nachi Gordon managed to take 2 hours and Mamish put it into 60 seconds. And I look at it and he said, you know what? I could have done this speech in 60 seconds. Why did I have to musha the crowd, Nebuch, torture them for 2 hours? Look what Nachi did. He took 1 minute and he put it all in. Everything else was more or less superfluous. But you know what they say? Some say it from Churchill, some quote it from earlier authorities. But a great orator once said, he wrote in a letter and he said, you know, if I have to speak for 2 minutes, I need to prepare for 2 weeks. If I have to speak for 2 hours, I need to prepare only a few hours before. But if I have all day to speak, I don't have to prepare. The ability to be able to compress it into that Tzach Adash B'achav is indeed very meaningful, very inspiring. They say there was once a rabbi who used to give long sermons, and the president of the shul went over to him Sunday morning and he said, Rabbi, you know, it's not fair. Rabbi says, what's not fair? Why does only our congregation get to hear your brilliant wisdom? I think we have to get you a spot on cable television Sunday morning. Your sermon for Shabbos should be aired to the whole world. The rabbi in humility says that would be a very meaningful idea. The guy says, you know what, I'll sponsor it, but there's no way I'm going to get an hour on cable television. Can you compress the speech to 20 minutes? The rabbi says, impossible. It's too rich. It's too brilliant. It's too meaningful. He says, okay, no slot. Rabbi comes back in a week. He says, you know what? I think with great effort, we can get it down to 20 minutes. President says, where am I getting 20 minutes on television? I'm not getting 20 minutes. What about 5 minutes? Impossible. It's too much depth. He says, okay, forget it. A week later, the rabbi says, you know what? I can give a message in 5 minutes. He says, who's going to give me 5 minutes on television? I want national television. What about 60 seconds? He says, no way. Forget it. After a week, the rabbi runs back. He says, you know what? I can give the message in 1 minute. Get me on TV. He says, Rabbi, so why every Shabbos do you do it for an hour? Is my question to you. So Meaningful Minute, created and directed by my dear beloved friend, Reb Nachi, and all of his staff and dedicated friends who inspire, 50,000 Jews a day, growing stronger from day to day. Kein Yirbu really also challenge people like me to ask ourselves if we could cultivate the skill of Rabbi Yehuda, Rosh HaMedabrim B'chol Makom, to make from 10, 3, in order to be able to compress in a concise way, because as they say, less is really more. Now, my minute is already over. I spoke for more than a minute. So really, since this is a Meaningful Minute event, I should really get down. But Nachi texted me 60. So did you mean 60 seconds? Or did you mean 60 minutes? For the Meaningful Minute, I guess that you get on WhatsApp. So I guess the 60 tonight is supposed to be a few meaningful minutes comprised together, but I do ask God to give me the grace and ability to be able to convey words of Torah, chizuk, inspiration based on Torah at this momentous time as we conclude the year Tovshin Ayin Tes, and we begin and prepare to welcome a new year, 5,780. Hey Allah from Tovshin Pei. Haba Aleinu v'al Kol Yisrael l'toiva v'livracha. They say that I'll tell you something. A woman comes to me and says, Rabbi, why? I'm looking for a perfect man. I don't know who's laughing, but it's probably the women, right? Okay, I was right. Thank you. I wanted to make sure I'm not senile. I'm looking for a perfect man, Rabbi. Why? Can you help me find a perfect man? I say, listen, Einstein taught us that perfection is relative. The theory of relativity, what for one person is a perfect man, is for the other person a nightmare. You have to define to me a perfect man, and then I'll help you find him. She says, Rabbi, why in my world a perfect man is a man who wakes up 5 o'clock in the morning, makes his own bed, prepares his own breakfast, prepares his own lunch and dinner, cleans up after himself, surfs the web only 7 minutes a day. He's a responsible, accountable person, good manners, exercises daily, reads daily. And by the way, you always know where he is. There's no such a thing. He disappeared. He's not answering. He is predictable. He's reliable. He's consistent. His location is always known to his wife. He doesn't see his wife as a slave. He does his own laundry. And finally, he's in bed at 9 o'clock p.m. This is a perfect man. You think I could find him? I said, of course. She says, where? I said, in prison. So this fellow sends me an email. I don't know if it happened to him or in the version of 1984, George Orwell, he thought it will happen to him. But this is his story. It's Motzei Shabbos. It's Saturday night, 9 o'clock. What does a good Jewish family do Motzei Shabbos, 9 o'clock? So this fellow calls up the pizza store. Somebody answers, he says, is this Gordon's pizza? Not Nachi Gordon, not another Gordon. There's different Jewish Gordons. Is this Gordon pizza? And the fellow responds, no, sir, it's Google pizza. It's Google pizza, I must have dialed the wrong number, sorry. The person says, no, sir, Google bought off Gordon's pizza last month. Okay. The man says, I would like to order a pizza. And the fellow in the Google pizza says, do you want your usual, sir? He says, my usual? You know me? You know what I order? He says, well, according to our caller ID data sheet, the last 12 times you called, you ordered an extra large pizza, 3 cheeses, a thick crust, 3 cans of Coke, vanilla ice cream, chocolate sprinkles on top, with a piece of cheesecake, knish, French fries submerged in oil with a lot of ketchup. And the man says, yes, that's what I want. And the fellow in Google's pizza says, may I suggest that this time you order a pizza with arugula, sun-dried tomatoes, olives, whole wheat, gluten-free, thin crust, 3 bottles of water, some wheatgrass, fresh juice, squeezed. The man says, what? I detest wheatgrass juice and I detest vegetables. Fellow on Google Pizza says, but your cholesterol is really not good, sir. How in the world do you know about my cholesterol, he says. Well, we cross-referenced your home phone number with your medical records. We have the results of your blood test for the last 7 years. You really need to take care of your cholesterol. This Saturday night pizza order is not conducive for longevity and good health. Man says, listen, I don't want your rotten vegetable pizza, your ridiculous wheatgrass juice. I already take medication for my cholesterol. Fellow in Google says, excuse me, sir, you have not taken your medication regularly. How do you know? According to our database, you purchased a box of 30 tablets for cholesterol, but that was 6 months ago. Guy says, you're Meshuggah. I bought more from another drugstore. Says, that doesn't show on your credit card statements. I paid in cash. Well, according to your bank statement, you never withdrew enough cash to be able to buy these tablets. Says, I have another source of cash. Sir, that new source of cash does not show on your last tax return unless you bought them from cash that's coming from an undeclared source of income, which is against the law. You are driving me crazy, the guy screams. The man in Google says, I'm driving you crazy. I'm trying to help you. You may end up in prison. By the time this conversation is over, I am trying to rescue from prison. All our information is intended with the sole goal of helping you. At this point, the man freaks out. He was trying to order Mitzvah Shabbos pizza and French fries for his family, not get a tutorial on tax returns and cholesterol and blood pressure. He screams, enough already, I'm sick and tired of Google, I'm sick and tired of Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, Instagram, Telegram, and all the others. I am leaving to a remote island without internet, cable TV, no cell phone service, and no idiots and morons like you to spy on me. The man says, that's not happening. He says, who are you to tell me? He says, well, your passport expired 6 months ago. And you know, I share this. I just got it. I share this with you, my dear. I share this with you, my dear friends, because of a moment I want to discuss this evening. Shofar blowing on Rosh Hashanah is followed by a very interesting prayer which begins with the three words everybody knows. Hayoim haras olam. Hayoim haras olam. If you look in your English prayer books, translation, today is the birthday of the world. Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary when we celebrate a new year, the birthing of creation and of our ancestors, Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve. But Rabbeinu David Avudraham, one of the great sages, asks the following question in his commentary on the Siddur that Avudraham wrote. Fascinating question. He said, where does the term haras olam come from? Hayom haras olam. The answer is it comes from a verse at the end of Jeremiah chapter 20. Yirmiyahu Perek Chaf. Yirmiyahu Hanavi, as you may know, was a prophet who felt that his life was a cursed life. He says and cries, cursed is the day that I was born. Cursed is the person who came to my father and told him, your wife gave birth to a son. And then he says, cursed is the fact that I emerged. Yirmiyahu Hanavi prays, laments, and cries as he pines for a very different outcome. And he says, Vatihili imi kivri v'rachma haras olam. How I would have wished if my mother's womb was my grave. If her rechem, if her womb was haras olam, a place where I remained pregnant forever. Meaning Yirmiyah wishes that he was never born, that he would have never seen the light of day. He would have never emerged into what he felt was a cursed world. He wished the grave would have been the womb of his mother. He would have been a stillborn child. V'rachma haras olam, or womb would be the place where he would remain pregnant forever, meaning he would never emerge as a living, viable organism. Asks Avudraham, that's where the sages got the term haras olam. But do you see the apparent distortion? In Yirmiyah, what does haras mean? Pregnant. In the prayers of Rosh Hashanah, what does haras mean? The birthday. Olam in Yirmiyah means olam, forever. I wish I would have remained impregnated in my mother's womb forever. And in the prayer, they changed haras from pregnancy to birth, and olam from forever to the world. Hayom haras olam. They took those two words from Yirmiyah, because that's the only place in the Tanakh we have this unique combination, haras olam. But the interpretation of it seems completely distorted and completely not in sync with what Yirmiyah Hanavi is saying. This is the question Rabbeinu David Avudraham raises. But I want to address another question as we move a few days subsequent to Rosh Hashanah, the holy day Yom Kippur. And there we explore a very unique moment. The Kohen Gadol, the high priest, has just emerged from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the holiest of holies. All year we anticipated this moment, the highlight, the apex of the year, when the highest priest, the holiest Jew, on the holiest day, would enter into the holiest space. It was a charged moment. It was allowed only once a year. He would go in to do the avodah, the holy service in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and he came out. And what was the first thing he did when he came out? He would pray a short prayer. It had to be very short, because the fear and the dread was tangible. They didn't want any to remain too long there. They were too afraid. A short prayer, though, he prayed. What was this prayer? It's a prayer that we repeat every year as we repeat and share the avodah in the middle of Musaf of Yom Kippur. And you read the prayer, and it's obviously very short, it's very concise. It took maybe 10 seconds, 20 seconds, less even than a meaningful minute. And when you look at what he speaks about, what do you put into a very short prayer? He speaks about the needs that define the collective body of the Jewish people. First, he speaks about climate. You need rain. If there's no rain, there's no crop, there's no produce, there's no grain, there is famine and starvation. And you probably know that in ancient times, sometimes 10, 20% of civilization died from famine. We're blessed today that in the United States of America, more people are dying from obesity than from starvation. Do you know that? But that deserves a special shehechiyanu between Google Pizza and Gordon's Pizza, between a kiddush everywhere, and probably after I speak too. Thursday night, Tayameh, Cholent, wherever you go. I don't know the system in the 5 towns when the Cholent begins. Is it already before the rabbi's sermon? Present company excluded, of course. So the Kohen Gadol asks for rain. That's number one. He also asks for parnasa, livelihood. People need to live. We shouldn't have destitute people, needy people, starving people. We shouldn't need another nation to give us food. Jewish people should have parnasa, should have livelihood. He also asks that the atzei hasada, the trees of the field, should yield their produce. And he finally asks, V'lo yadi shilton with the Beis Yehuda. The Jewish people shouldn't lose their independence and sovereignty in Eretz Yisrael, in our eternal homeland. We should be able to be independent spiritually, politically, militarily. But he adds one more line into this prayer. Shana shaloi tapil isha pri bitna. A year in which no woman should experience a miscarriage. And I always wondered, it's a very beautiful and important and noble and loving prayer. No woman should experience, Chalila, heaven forbid, a miscarriage. But one second, my dear high priest, if we're getting to that level of request, why not ask that people shouldn't fall ill? And those who are ill should experience recovery. And those who are infertile and cannot even give birth should be able to have children. And no people should die young. And we should be cured from disease and other plagues and maladies. He doesn't mention any of those, not because they're not important, because this is a very short prayer, and he just gives like a few bullet points of things that affect the nation generally: our sovereignty in Eretz Yisrael, our livelihood, our sustenance, our rain, our trees, our produce, our grain, our parnasa. But then he adds one thing from all the individual blessings in people's own homes and families and marriages and relationships. A year in which a woman does not experience a miscarriage. Somehow, this had to be inserted there. Why? And it's the only prayer in which he says shana. A year. The other ones he just says there should be rain, there should be parnasa. Jews should continue to live in the land of Israel with prosperity. We shouldn't be destroyed. No one should conquer us. We shouldn't be defeated. But when it comes to miscarriage, he says a year. It's such a fascinating question. If you open our Rambam, Hilchas Avodas Yom Kippurim, chapter 4, he deletes this line. You open up a Maseches Yuma Nun Gimel, a Maseches Tainis, this line is deleted. And it's clear, it's out of context. And yet, we have it in most prayer books. And this tefillah, according to most, was composed by one of the high priests. Yosi Kohen Gadol composed this prayer, and somehow, according to most, felt that this line has to be there. Why? My dear friends, I ask you this evening. I want to ask another question, my dear friends. The holiest prayer of the year, we all know, is Kol Nidrei. The very melody of Kol Nidrei is heart-wrenching. It's moving. It has inspired and moved and touched Jews for generations, for centuries. It tugged on the deepest chords of the Jewish heart's violin. I read once that Chazan Yossler Rosenblatt, refused a concerto in Vienna with Kol Nidrei, even though he was offered at the time an astronomical, insane sum of close to $50,000. This is in the early 1900s, and he said Kol Nidrei is not for a Viennese concert. And Yossler Rosenblatt, as you may know, died a destitute man, a poor Jew. There was something about Kol Nidrei, its melody. Kol Nidrei v'sorei v'charamei v'koinamei v'chinusei v'kinuyei. You know what the mazel with Kol Nidrei is? It's written in Aramaic and most people don't understand it. But I want to ask you this Yom Kippur to take an English machzer and to read the translation and to help me understand what in the world is the connection between the nature of this heart-wrenching, deeply emotionally moving, inspiring melody and the words. Kol Nidrei is not even a prayer. Kol Nidrei is a legal declaration. And you know what we basically say in Kol Nidrei? All the promises, all the oaths, all the pledges, all the commitments that I'm going to make from this Yom Kippur till next Yom Kippur are meaningless, futile, valueless. Shvisin, shvilin, shvisin, shvikin, shvisin, ptelin, mevatolin. Lo sheririn velo kayomin. Now this is important because Hataras Nedarim, Moitzas Vasecha Tishmor La Yachal Dvarai. In Judaism, words are sacred, and when you make a promise, you are obligated morally to God and to people to fulfill your promise. And therefore, on Yom Kippur, when everybody is in shul, the Rishonim explain. We publicly say, you know what? Whatever we promise next year is B'li Neder. You know, there were some Rishonim who were very against Kol Nidrei. They said the Gentiles are going to ask, what do Jews do on the holiest night of the year? Oh, they tell the world that what they say doesn't mean anything. Zol Zayin, how did this become the holiest prayer of the year? And how do you explain it in the context of the melody? I mean, look at this melody and do it with English lyrics and you'll forgive me. And tell me if you can wrap your brain around this. My promises are no promises. And my commitments are no commitments. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. And my oaths are no oaths. Riboy Noi Shalom, what is going on here? You hear the crescendo? We reach the peak. Ushavua sana la shavuos. And it goes up and it goes down. And there's the somber notes and exhilarating notes. Transformative emotionally. But the lyrics are basically saying that nothing you say is serious. My dearest friends, a lot has been written on this question. Some say that it's famously connected to the Spanish Marranos. All year took an oath to the church that they would be faithful Christians, and once a year their Jewishness emerged, and we declare Al Das HaMokim Val Das HaKol B'Yeshiva Shel Ma'ila B'Yeshiva Shel Mata Onu Matirin L'Spal L'Ma'av Yonim. Once a year we allow all the communities to welcome the transgressors. This is what triggered such emotion. Jews who were disguised all year as Christians, and the Christians called them Marranos, which means pigs. In our literature, they're called Anusim, the forced, coerced Jews. But Yom Kippur, they came back. But that doesn't cut it because Kol Nidrei has been composed. The words have been a staple of the onset of Yom Kippur centuries before the story of the Spanish Inquisition and the Spanish expulsion in the 14th and 15th century after the Common Era. And I'm going to share tonight with you an insight that I discovered once It's an insight in a parenthesis, in a discourse of the Baal HaTanya. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi in his magnum opus, Lekutei Torah in Parshas Matos, which deals with promises. And in a parenthesis, there is grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek, based on the teachings of his grandfather, the Baal HaTanya, sheds an incredible light, conferring great perspective to this enigma of Kol Nidrei as the hallmark, the quintessence, and the commencement of the holiest day in the year, the day of Yom Kippur. You see, the high priest goes into the Holy of Holies, but he's not the only one who goes into the Holy of Holies. On a spiritual level, every Jew, Yom Kippur, goes into Kodesh HaKadoshim, to the Holy of Holies. And whenever I enter into my holiest space, I come out, you come out. And what happens at that moment? Whenever you enter into a space where you can see yourself with more transparency, when you're not entangled by so much trauma, fear, insecurity, when you can see yourself in a deeper way, in a holier way, in a more godly way and divine way, what happens when I emerge from the Holy of Holies? I am pregnant. Pregnant with what? Pregnant with dreams. Pregnant with possibilities. Pregnant with potential. And at that moment, the high priest says a tefillah. Of course, he davens for the Jewish people. He davens for the land of Israel. He prays for the collective, continuous success and prosperity of God's people. But there's one more thing he has to pray for at that fateful moment. Shana. It should be a year. Shaloi tapil isha pri bitna. That a woman should not experience a miscarriage. Of course, it means on a physical, biological level, children should be born healthy. But there is also a deeper layer of meaning. Every Jew is an Isha, the wife, the spouse of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of Hashem. The Rambam says in Hilchos Tshuva, chapter 10, the whole Shir Hashirim is about the marriage, the relationship between the cosmic husband and the cosmic wife, between heaven and earth, between God and the Jewish people. It should be a year that no woman should miscarry. How many of us are pregnant with potential, with possibility, with idealism, with dreams, with so much opportunity to change ourselves and change the world, and yet what happens? Sadly, we experience a miscarriage. The dreams die in utero. They're not actualized. They're not fulfilled. Now you will understand the depth, the nuanced subtlety of our sages when they took the Haras Olam of Yirmiyah and converted it into a Haras Olam of Rosh Hashanah. And I asked the question, how can they distort the verse? Does Haras mean pregnancy or birth? Does Olam mean forever or the world? Wasn't that precisely their point? As I blow the shofar, as I hear the shofar, I declare, we declare, Hayoim Haras Olam. And it's up to me, and it's up to you, and it's up to you, and it's up to us to translate those words. I will choose this Rosh Hashanah to say Haras Olam and translate it as, today is the birthday of the world. Today is the day when I will be born, when the world will be born, when all of my inner potentiality, when my inner greatness, exaltedness, loftiness, sublimity, sacredness, my infinite light, the light of the divine that dwells in me, in my soul, which is a chelek Eloka mimal mamash, a soul that's a fragment of the divine, a year in which my light will be born. It will emerge from utero. It will be actualized. It will light up my world. It will light up my home, my community, my world, the world. Or maybe, heaven forbid, I'm going to translate it differently. Hayoim haras olam. Today is the day when I remain forever pregnant. Today is the day when everything remains stuck inside. It doesn't come to life. It doesn't come to fruition. It was a fleeting dream. It was a good thought. But somehow I could not transform the cursed haras olam to the blessed haras olam. The sages chose these words to teach us that this is the very choice you and I must make as we usher in a new year on Rosh Hashanah to define what is our hayoim haras olam going to mean this coming year. That's what the high priest had to pray for at those fateful moments, for that tragedy. When you look at such great souls, I'm sitting here in a room with such great souls, so much potential, and yet so many people who don't believe it. So many people who look in the mirror, and what they're seeing is, at best, light that must remain pregnant for eternity, if they can even see light. You know, there's that immortal story about the great Volozhiner Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbeinu Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, known as the Netziv, who lived in the 19th century, passed away in the 1890s, and he was both the rabbi and Rosh Yeshiva of Volozhin, the great city in Lithuania where the yeshiva was founded by his grandfather, Reb Chaim Volozhiner, the student of the Vilna Gaon. And they tell a story that once he completed writing one of his books, one of his works, and at a feast, a festival meal that he made in honor of this great siyum and momentous milestone, he spoke to his students about his own history, and he said that when he was a young boy, he was laying in bed one night, and he's eavesdropping a conversation between his mommy and his tati. And his father tells his mother, you know, we tried for so many years. They called him Hirschel, Tzvi Hirsch, Naftali Tzvi. He was called Reb Hirsch or Reb Tzvi. We tried so many years for Tzvi Hirsch to be able to learn Torah, but it's not successful. So tomorrow I arranged for him to become an apprentice by a carpenter. Our Naftali Tzvi is very good with his hands. He'll become a carpenter and he'll live a successful life. And mommy agreed. And little Naftali Tzvi crawled out of bed. He was around 12 or 13 by mitzvah age. And he runs into the room where his father and mother are sitting. And with tears in his eyes, he said, no, I want to learn. I want to steig in Torah. And his father and mother say, we tried. You know, there's no mitzvah to sit on what we call today kvetchen a bank. Just squeeze a bench for years and years, no end. In that world that didn't exist. You'll live a productive life. Your hands are blessed. Hashem gave you a blessing with your hands. And you'll build beautiful, beautiful pieces of furniture for yourself and for the Jewish people. It's an honorable business. And you'll make an honorable income. Reb Naftali Tzvi Yehuda said, not yet. Not yet. I want to try to succeed and dedicate my life to learning and teaching. And his father said, there's no need to deceive yourself. He said, give me one more chance. He says, we'll give you one more day. But really, it hasn't worked till now. It's really not for you. And the next day, if you could just put your cell phones on vibrate, and if somebody does ring, send them my love. But better put it on vibrate and send them my love afterwards. And one day he says, the next day he went to yeshiva, he went to his teacher, and he mamash put in his whole neshama, his whole soul. And he became one of the great luminaries, Torah luminaries of the generation. His works, his books, still grace so many libraries and Jewish homes and shuls and yeshivas and batei midrash that are still studied till this very day as I speak. And he looks at his students and he said, you know why? You know what made me feel compelled to argue with my parents that fateful evening? He said, I'll tell you what was going through my mind. I thought to myself, I will become a great carpenter. I will build beautiful pieces of furniture, and then one day I will pass on and I will face the throne of glory, and God will turn to me and he'll say, Naftali Tzvi, Mr. Berlin, tell me, what do you do for a living? And I'll smile and I'll say, Ribono Shel Olam, as a carpenter, as zoins und as solches. I was a carpenter, you can't find such in the whole Lithuania. Hashem says, let me see the products. And I would show him the stenders, and I would show him the bookcases, and I would show him the tables, and I would show him the chairs, and I would show him the frames, and the beds, and the pushkalach, and the bimmers, and the platforms, and the Aron Koideshes, and the structures that I built. The design, the artistic skill, the intricacy, the skillfulness. And God will go, mahogany, maple, ganz Geschmack, ganz fine, not bad for Lithuanian Jewish kid. But I have one question. Where is the Hameg Dover? Hameg Dover is the commentary the Netziv wrote on Chumash. Where's the Harchiv Dover? That's another commentary on Chumash. Where's the Imrei Shefer? That's the commentary the Netziv wrote on the Haggadah. Where's the Hameg She'elo? That's the commentary the Netziv wrote on the She'iltos of Rabbi Chaim. Where is the Emek? Where is the Emek? The Sifri, what's it called? Emek HaNetziv, thank you. The commentary of the Netziv on Sifri. Where are these books? Where are these works? And I'm going to look at God. I'm going to look at Hashem and shrug my shoulders. I won't have what to answer. It's because of this consideration I told my parents, not yet. The Netziv did not want to die with his great potentials and dreams in utero. And I heard that a little while ago, there was a prominent Litvische Rosh Yeshiva who was speaking to his students, and he was not impressed with them. And he said this story to them, and then he said, and after 120, when you come up to heaven, God is going to turn to you guys and say, so what do you do with your life? Say, we sat and we learned. And he's going to look at you and say, beautiful, but I have a question. Wo is the Ständer? Wo sind the Sheikh? Wo is the Bimme? Wo is the Aron Kodesh? I am so inspired by a Jew who lives in Paris. He's 93 years old. His name is Mr. Kaminsky. Adolfo Kaminsky was born in Argentina. He moved to Paris as a youngster. At 13, he dropped out of school. He was not the Netziv. He needed to help support the family. What did he do? Where did he go? He went to work for somebody who was a clothes dyer, which was the precursor of what we call today dry cleaners. And he was fascinated, and he learned how to remove stains, how to clean garments and cloaks. He got himself chemistry textbooks and devoured them, and his boss was an engineer, chemistry engineer, and an expert. Every question you would ask him, and this man would enlighten him. And then Hitler, Yamach Shemoy, invaded France in 1940, and the Jews began to be rounded up. And Adolfo Kaminsky joined the resistance and employed that one extraordinary skill he had to forge passports and make them look authentic. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Jewish children were rounded up in France and deported to the death camps, where they were murdered in the gas chambers. But I want you to know that Adolfo Kaminsky, forging passport after passport, saved close to 10,000 Jewish children. He forged passports, and this allowed those children to be clandestinely transported, immigrate to other countries, having those false passports. And Kaminsky said in an interview that I watched, that I listened to, he said, remember, one little error on a passport meant that a child died. He saved almost 10,000 children and close to 14,000 Jews. But then Mr. Kaminsky speaks about one day in 1944 when he learned that within 3 days, 900 children will be sent to Auschwitz and gassed. 900 children. This means that he had 3 days to create from scratch 900 passports. So they asked him, did you do it? How did you do it? How did you have the energy? And he said, I made a simple calculation. I knew that every passport from beginning to end takes me 30 minutes. I stand corrected. Mr. Kaminsky said, I realized that in 1 hour, I can create 30 documents. I can forge 30 documents. I realized that for every hour that I go to sleep, 30 Jewish children will die. I didn't go to sleep. All 900 children were saved. A book just came out about him, his life, and he was interviewed. And they asked him, do you have any regrets? He said, the one thing I don't stop thinking about is all the children that I did not save. And I was thinking to myself, here is a man, and I hope he lives many, many long, happy, and healthy years, that in the last 5 minutes of his life, he will not look back and say, my potential died in utero. He will not look back with such a regret. He will be able to say, I single-handedly, with my hand, 2 hands, saved close to 14,000 Jews, close to 10,000 children, even as he still thinks about all those he did not save. Then I understood what Hayoim Haras Olam means. Then I understood why the high priest prayed for a year in which none of us allow our glorious potential to save lives, to kindle hearts, to inspire souls, to light up our homes, our communities, and the world, should go unrealized, stifled, crushed, lifeless within our sacred wombs. Rechem, which the Maharal says comes from the word rachem, which means compassion. But now I ask you, friends, why is it that this happens to so many of us so much of the time? Why do I look in the mirror every Rosh Hashanah, every Yom Kippur, or sometimes every night and ask myself, why can't I live my life fully? Why can't I actualize my full glory and potential? What is it? What is it about us that so many of us remain stifled, that so much of our creativity remains unfulfilled, unrealized? Who was it, Thoreau, who said most people live lives of quiet desperation? One of my favorite stories is about that baby camel who turned to her mother and said, Mommy, why do we camels have 3-toed ugly feet? And Mommy said, because we're not just lazy animals who sit and eat bananas like the monkeys. We trek thousands of miles in the deserts. We need sturdy feet. Mommy, why do we have these ugly eyelashes? Because we don't just sit and do nothing. We trek thousands of miles in the Sahara. There are windstorms. These eyelashes protect our eyes. Mommy, why do we have these grotesque humps? Why can we have these handsome flat backs? Oh, we are the only mammals who can go for weeks and months without water. How? We have these reserves of fat in these humps, and when we are dehydrated, they dissolve, and they nourish us and nurture us and irrigate us. The camel can go for weeks or months without water, without food, and survive. That's why we have these humps. The baby camel said, "Mommy, I get it. Three-toed, ugly feet to march thousands of miles in the Sahara Desert and other deserts. Weird eyelashes to protect us from windstorms as we march thousands of miles through deserts. Repulsive humps to ensure our food and sustenance and water as we march thousands of miles in dehydrated deserts, parched, barren deserts." Got it, Mommy? I have one last fourth question. If this is the case, what in the world are we doing in a cage in the Bronx Zoo? And Mommy said, "You asked the four questions so beautifully. Let me give you an answer. Avodim hayinu." And I ask you, isn't that the question we have to ask? If I'm capable of flying, if I'm capable of soaring, if you're capable of so much, why am I stuck in a cage? Why? What is it? And I think the profoundest answer that has been ever given to this question, in addition to what your therapist has explained to you, and your psychoanalyst, and your doctor, and your rabbi, and your mentor, and of course your mother-in-law, of why you're such a shlemazel, shlemiel, kaptzen, nudnik, lo yutzlachnik. You know, in English, there's one word that's called a loser. In Yiddish, you know how many words we have for a loser? I think at least 200. That's just the richness of the Yiddish language. Between the Shlemazalim and the Batlonim and the Yuklach and the Schleppers and the Idioten and the Shoitim and the Mamzerim and the Chutzpin Yaks and the Loyutzlachnik and the Nudnikas and the Pera Adam are verschleppt, verhackt, verquetscht, zerdreht, zerrudert, zerduldet, verwundet. You remember your grandmother when she would really get excited about certain people? Just like there's no curses like in Yiddish. You know that? No language has curses. Even Russian. Russian is pretty good, but not like Yiddish. Right? Du sollst sein wie a Menorah. Hängen bei Tag und brennen bei Nacht. You should hang like a candelabra, right? Be like a candelabra. Hang during the day, burn at night. Alle Zähne sollen herausfallen, chutz von die, was ist zu zwei. All your teeth should fall out besides the one that kills you. Who comes up with these expressions? I don't know. I really don't know. So I know all the answers, and there are good answers out there. But I want to show you how our sages defined it. It's all in two words, and it's called Kol Nidrei V'Sorei V'Charamei V'Koinamei V'Kinusei. That's what it is. You see, there are two types of promises we make. There are promises we make to others. I'm going to pay you back the loan. I'm going to take you as an investor and I'm going to build up a business. The whole 5 towns is going to brenn from jealousy. The promises we make, real, unreal, fantasy, fictional, reality. Okay. My friends, there are other promises. You know which ones? Promises we make to ourselves. Oy, oy, oy. Kol Nidrei. All the promises, the oaths, the pledges. The esare. The word esare means the word beisa asurim, a prison. Matir asurim. Asur means when you're tied down, when you're forbidden to do something, your hands are tied. Esore. All those things that tie us down, the promises that we make to ourselves. Did you ever tell yourself, my marriage will never be a thriving, happy, wholesome marriage? Never! My relationship with my children will always remain damaged. That's just who my children are, or it's just who I am. I'll never again make peace with my brother, with my sister-in-law. I'll never again be on speaking terms with my brother-in-law. Depression is my fate. It's my destiny. I just can't be a happy person. Or somebody once said, Rabbi, why? Just because I'm paranoid, it doesn't mean the whole world is not out to get me. I'm just that guy. The whole world is out to get me. Me, I'm destined to remain ashlamazel, ashlamil. My grandmother used to say the shlamil pours the soup on the shlamazel. The nudnik wants to know, what type of soup was it? I'm just that guy. Yes, I'm the guy who argues with everybody. I'm confrontational. I am argumentative. I am a divisive voice. Yes, I'm the guy who doesn't speak at least to 6 people in shul. And it's been like this for 22 years. And don't think you're going to come before Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi White, and give a lecture and try to change me. I'm older than you. You could have been my grandson. It's just who I am. These are the promises I make to myself. I can't make up with my mother. I can't make up with my father. I can't make up with my nephew. I can't make up with my partner. I can't make up with the former friend. I can't pick up the telephone and say, I'm sorry, let's reignite this relationship. 12 years of not talking to each other is enough. I can't. I have too of a big ego, or I have too much insecurity. These are the nidarim. These are the promises you make to yourself. And you swear. You can swear. Shvuei v'charome v'koinome. I swear I know myself better than everybody else. Maybe I'm smiling to you, but internally I know how miserable I am. I know how depressed I am. I know how melancholy I am. I know how pessimistic I am. This is just who I am. Ay, 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 ay. And what happens to my dreams? And what happens to my infinite light? It dies in my womb. Comes Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and the Rebbeinu Shalom says, you're stuck. Who are you? You are an ambassador of God in this world. You are an ambassador of infinity. You are an ambassador of love, light, hope. You may have toxicity, you may have trauma, you may have setbacks, you may have inner struggles, but your soul is larger than your struggles. Your soul is larger than your trauma. Your soul is larger than your pain. You could contain it, you can look at it, you can observe it, and you can be empowered not to allow those forces of toxicity, trauma, fear, paralysis, smugness, egotism to define you. Rather, you define them as catalysts, as challenges, as springboards for rejuvenation. Both Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner and Rabbi Moshe Shapiro Zatzal once gave a very profound interpretation to the word that Balak uses for a curse. The common word is ara. But what's the other word that Balak uses? Bilam and Balak? Lecha? Kava. Kava. There's arur and there's kava. Where does this word kava come from? And they associate it with another word. Lavan tells Yaakov before he leaves, Nakva alai scharcha ve'etena. Same words as kava. Basically, give me your fixed wage. Tell me your wage. Tell me what you deserve. Of course, he tries to, he's treacherous and he's deceptive. But he tells Yaakov, give me the schar, nakva, establish it for me. One of the greatest curses in the world is when you put yourself into a fixed mold and you tell yourself, or I tell myself, this is my fate, this is my destiny, this is my future, this is who I am. I will live in this box and die in this box. And maybe once in a while I'll look out for a moment. Maybe for that fleeting moment when I go into Kodesh HaKadoshim, I will pick up my head out of the cage and I will look up. But then I will know that immediately I have to go back into this fixed mold that has usually been imposed upon me, consciously or unconsciously, maybe when I was a little child. And now I'm just a victim, not to any circumstances outside of me, but to my erroneous belief system about myself inside of me. Many of you remember Shimon Peres. He died 2-3 years ago, right before Rosh Hashanah. And I read at the time that his son, Chami Peres, turned to his father and said, Abba, what should I write on your tombstone? Shimon Peres was 93 years old. You know what he said? He said, write on my tombstone, here is buried a man who died prematurely. It touched me. It was such a Jewish sentiment. I'm 93. He went out with a bang, you remember? President of Israel. He had leaders of all the countries came to pay their last respects to President Shimon Peres. He was a very popular politician, especially in the entire world. And I'm not discussing now some of his policies, which I think were tragic and constituted a historical error. But he loved his people, and he never ceased to be ambitious and dream. But I want to talk about another tombstone tonight. Yogi Berra's. Yogi Berra also died not long ago. And his wife once turned to him and said, Yogale, or Berale, I'm having a problem. Where do I bury you? He says, what's the issue? She says, you were born in Missouri. You live in New Jersey. But you play New York. Where should I bury you? New York, New Jersey, Missouri. And he looked at his wife and said, surprise me. I say to you, my dearest brothers and sisters, this year, surprise yourself. Let it not be a year where we die prematurely as we're still alive. Thank you very much.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.